What if I told you that some of the most hyped sustainability innovations in beauty, ranging from waterless shampoos to dissolvable sheet masks, might actually be part of the problem? Welcome to Green Beauty Conversations. I'm Lorraine Dallmeier, Chartered Environmentalist, Biologist, and the CEO of award-winning online organic cosmetic formulation school, Formula Botanica. And this is part one of a special 4-part series called The Truth About Sustainable Beauty, where I share the biggest insights that I've gained from hosting this podcast for the last 7 years. I've interviewed hundreds of people all across the cosmetic sector, and I've seen some big patterns emerge. And I plan to share those patterns with you in this short series so that you can see them too. In each episode, I'll tackle one of the uncomfortable truths that the beauty industry doesn't want to face. And today, we're going to start with innovation, because clever doesn't always mean sustainable. So in beauty, we're awash with exciting new ideas all the time. Dissolvable sheet masks, refillable packaging, compostable films, bioplastics, biotech, you name it. And you know what? I'm not here to rain on anyone's parade, because these inventions are often brilliant and they're pioneering efforts by founders and formulators who genuinely want to do better. But we have got to start asking the harder question, which is what happens if everyone does this? Because that's where real sustainability lives, right? It doesn't live in the niche or the clever one-off or the beautifully branded single-use solution. Because boring as this sounds, and I do apologize, but sustainability lives in systems, in waste hierarchies. It lives in big picture thinking. So let's take one example, for instance, dissolvable wipes. I was interviewed by the Fast Company last year on this topic, and I said then what I'll say again now. Products like dissolvable wipes, they're clever. They're a welcome attempt to reimagine single-use materials, because currently wet wipes are an environmental nightmare. They create plastic pollution and sewer blockages and contamination of waterways and ecosystems. And clearly something needs to be done to solve this problem. So this idea of a dissolvable wet wipe is awesome. And it's created by well-meaning people who are deeply committed to sustainability. But now let's zoom out for a minute, because globally we produce an estimated 1.7 million tons of wet wipe material per year. And that might not actually sound like a lot, but consider how lightweight some of these wet wipes are. So to get to 1.7 million tons, that's a lot of wet wipes. And if every single one of those wipes became dissolvable tomorrow, we'd still be left with a massive system of waste, one that now depends on our fresh water systems to dilute and disperse those materials we still don't fully understand the long-term impacts of on aquatic life. So the problem here isn't the innovation, because for a handful of brands, this is amazing and it's so clever. The problem is that we're not placing it in a context where it makes sense on a global scale. So another example is waterless beauty. This trend first gained traction in South Korea, where beauty brands marketed water-free products as more concentrated and therefore more effective. And that idea quickly evolved into a sustainability message. So less water in the formulation equals better for our environment. And on the surface, that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Because why ship heavy diluted products around the world when you can offer powders or bars or sticks instead? Less water, less packaging, lower emissions. It ticks all the right boxes. Except, unfortunately, it doesn't, because there is no such thing as a truly waterless product. Every ingredient has a water footprint, from the crops grown to produce oils and waxes, to the water used in distillation or processing, manufacturing, shipping, and ultimately in the consumer's bathroom. Even the packaging has a water cost. So waterless beauty might sound like a sustainability miracle, but it often distracts us from the real issue, which is overconsumption. And if we're being honest, most waterless products aren't radically changing our relationship with water use at all. They still rely on intensive agricultural practices, high energy manufacturing, and global shipping. And crucially, they still require water in your home. So when you rinse your face or lather your shampoo bar or mix your powdered cleanser. So while these products can play a role in reducing packaging waste or emissions during transport, they don't eliminate the beauty industry's water footprint. At best, they shift it. At worst, they obscure it entirely. So if we swap our water-based shampoo for a waterless one, then buy 5 different bars because they're trendy and cute and limited edition, have we actually really solved anything? Or let's take another example, wild harvested beauty. So a small indie brand working with a local community to harvest a native plant for its seed oil, beautiful, ethical, possibly even regenerative. Wild harvesting can be a powerful way to support biodiversity and traditional ecological knowledge when done correctly, especially when it's done on a small scale and in collaboration with local communities. It connects products to place. It gives consumers a sense of natural authenticity that's increasingly rare in beauty. But the problem arises when these ingredients catch the attention of larger markets, because as demand increases, what was once a low-impact, community-focused practice can quickly become extractive. Harvesting accelerates, monitoring falls by the wayside, incentives shift from stewardship to profit, and the very ecosystems that supported the ingredient then begin to degrade. If every brand suddenly jumped on that same wild harvested ingredient, ecosystems would collapse. And some already have. Or another example, let's take seaweed. Seaweed farming is often held up as a shining example of regenerative beauty. I've done that too. I've talked about it loads here on the podcast because seaweed is fast growing and nutrient rich and supportive of marine biodiversity. But there's a cautionary tale here as well. So a friend of mine who works at the UK Marine Regulatory Authority recently told me that they've seen a sudden boom in seaweed farm applications. So what happens if everyone starts a seaweed farm? What pressure does that place on coastal ecosystems or marine traffic or local communities? Seaweed can be a brilliant solution when done well, in the right place, at the right scale. But as with everything in sustainability, context is everything. And once you remove it from the context and scale it without limits, then you risk replacing one problem with another. So what I'm saying is this. Many of the solutions we see in the beauty industry today are clever, they're innovative, they're inventive, they may even reduce impacts in their specific niche. But clever is not the same as sustainable, because sustainability is never just about a single product. It's about the system that the product lives in. It's about how we source, make, market, use, and dispose of it. It's about what happens if 8 billion people use that product. And it's about what's being left out of the conversation, like the fact that the biggest sustainability issue in beauty isn't water use or dissolvable fabric. It's the constant pressure to grow, to sell more, to consume more. And this is why I often keep coming back to the waste hierarchy in my podcast. Reduce, reuse, recycle. And only then, if absolutely necessary, do we dispose. Now, I appreciate none of that is as exciting as dissolvable packaging, but it's where the real work of sustainability happens. And yet the beauty industry rarely prioritizes the waste hierarchy in how it innovates. Most efforts focus on recycling or composting, which are the lower rungs of the ladder, instead of starting at the top with avoidance and reduction. So instead of asking, how can we stop producing so much waste in the first place, the industry asks, how can we make this disposable product a little bit less bad? That is not transformative thinking. So real sustainability means slowing down the consumption cycle, reducing what we produce and reusing what we already have, not simply finding new ways to throw things away. So here's my challenge to you for this week. Next time you see a beauty brand making a sustainability claim, ask yourself, what's going to happen if everyone does this? And if the answer is still genuinely good for people and our environment, then yeah, we're onto something here. So the good news is this, we already have the tools to think bigger. The waste hierarchy isn't new, systems thinking isn't complicated, and there are brands out there, maybe even yours if you're listening, that are ready to lead by asking better questions. So real sustainability isn't flashy, but it is possible. And when we embed it into the foundation of how beauty works, not just what beauty makes, we can start to create solutions that actually hold up under pressure. And that isn't just exciting. That's transformational. Thank you for listening to this episode of Green Beauty Conversations. This was part 1 of my 4-part The Truth About Sustainable Beauty series. If you enjoyed it, please do leave us a 5-star review and share it with someone who wants to see the beauty industry do better. And don't forget to visit formulabotanica.com to try our free formulation course and learn how to be part of the change. In my next part of this short series, I'll be asking, what on earth does sustainable even mean in beauty anymore? Because right now it seems to mean everything and nothing. So I'll see you next week.